Hello, and welcome to 5-Minute Math. Today we are looking at the fifth grade concept of multiplication, specifically how we can represent decimal multiplication with place value blocks, and we'll do it in 5 minutes or less. So I want to represent a simple problem. Let's start with 2 and 43 hundredths times 4. How could we represent that and then use that representation to solve and find the product? Well, we see we have a key over here, and so we're going to use these place value blocks. Now, these place value blocks can be assigned different values. Typically, this big flat right here is worth 100, and then this 10 rod is worth 10, and then the little tiny cube is worth 1. But since we're dealing with decimals, I'm going to change the values here. I want this big flat to equal 1, because that's going to represent like 100th hundredths. And we've got this 10 rod here, that's going to just equal 1/10, because that's going to be 10 hundredths. And then each of these little cubes, I'm just going to add them drawing little circles. That's going to represent 1/100th. So as long as we can agree on what each of those are valued, we can use it to represent different things. So 2 and 43 hundredths times 4. You know what? I'm going to use the commutative property. I want to go ahead and just switch those. 4 groups, because that's really one way to think about multiplication. 4 groups of, or 4 times, 2 and 43 hundredths. All right, so let's build this 2 and 43 hundredths. Look at my place value. I've got my ones, right? I've got my tenths. I'll just represent that with fraction. And then I've got my 100ths. I'll represent that with a fraction as well. So I've got 2 ones, right? So I need 2 of these. I've got 4 tenths. So I'm just going to build it like that. There's my 4 tenths. And then 3 hundredths. I'll just put 3 hundredths right there. So this is 2, and I've got 43 hundredths right there. Now the problem says 2 and 43 hundredths times 4. I just flipped it. 4 groups of. So I just need to do this 3 more times. Then I'll have a decent representation. So that's 2 more times. Then we can use it to actually find the product. And we can use the standard algorithm to double check our work. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some circles or just some boundaries around each of these, just so we can see them as separate. Because what I want to do is I want to highlight that I've got 4 groups. So I need some type of line or container to separate the 4 groups. All right, so this is a representation of 2 and 43 hundredths times 4. Now, what does it actually equal? Well, let's just add like place values. All right, so I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right, so I've got 8 ones. Now, that might not necessarily mean that the answer has an 8 in the ones place, because we might need to regroup, right? So I've got 4, 8, 12, 16. So I've got 16 tenths. And then on my hundredths, 3, 6, 9, 12. All right, so I've got 12 hundredths. All right, so how do I add those up? Well, let's start regrouping, right? 12 hundredths, right? If I just add a decimal there, it's the same as 1.2 tenths. 1.2 tenths. The reason I want to do that is because I need to add that to my 16 tenths, right? So I've got my 16 tenths, add a decimal to each, is equal to 1.6 over 1, or just really 1.6. Okay, so what I have here are my 8 ones. Now I've got them all in ones, right? I've got 1.6. And then this is going to be 1.2 over 10. Let's make the decimal go over 1 more. I want to make them all go to the ones place. That's 12 hundredths right there. Line them up, and I could add it up, and that's going to be 9 and 72 hundredths.